Hello everyone, my name is Young and we have Nityan, and today we're doing Real Estate 1051 FASB-IASB enhancement. We're talking about initial setup and multinational. So our agenda today is to go through initial setup and changes and also multinational. Within initial setup and changes, we'll be going through application setting record, what we changed there, and also changes in real estate lease and asset lease, and also changes in assumption audit log. Within multinational, we'll go through local reporting for a new customer and also local reporting for existing customer. And then we'll go in through some release notes and references. So initial setup and changes in the application setting. We added a few fields in the application setting record, and then we'll go through some demo. So what we've added in the application setting records for the system administrator to config is adoption fiscal period for the new standard. And it's basically an initial fiscal start of the new standard, and then usually right now the standard is like, for example, is like January 1st, 2019, and we have a look back period for 2 years. So that look back period, we'll set it for like January 1st, 2017. But these are fiscal periods. We also added the supply start date to impact reports. This is an action that applies the filters. If people are familiar in our real estate and asset lease, in our accounting tab, we have metric reports that display these metrics, and we're putting a filter to apply these metrics so when it starts. So it uses the look back period of 2017 and filters to render those reports. And then we have we added lease transition relief checkbox, lease transition disclosure. These are for later releases. Currently, they're just placeholders for now in the application setting. We also added days to consider for accounting period close. It's basically the number of days. It's like a grace period for when a period closed. For example, if our period closed in January 31st, you might have like a 3-day grace period, 5-day, 6-day grace period. You'll set this number in the application setting record. And then also for accounting live, this checkbox is used for validations. When everything looks correct in the accounting, you would have this check so that validation can provide attention message to the lease accountant. So with that said, let's go through the application setting record. So here we are in TRIRIGA in the application setting record. So this application setting record is all used by system administrator. So the lease accountant and the system administrator, they would need to let the system administrator know what to set. So for example, like we mentioned, days to consider for the accounting period, this is the new field. Accounting live is the new field in the accounting standard. And then for the new standard adoption, we have, like I mentioned, the adoption fiscal period. It's a fiscal period where we select, and the look back period. Currently, we're defaulting in 2019 and 2017. And like I mentioned, the apply start date to impact reports, the metric reports, this is the action to set that filter to apply for all those metric reports. And in previous, we also had like a default accounting standard. The accounting standard right now, since if it's a U.S. company, we would set it to be GAAP as the standard. If you're an international company, you would set this as IFRS. So as you can see. And like I mentioned, lease accounting transition relief, lease lease transition disclosure, they're a placeholder for next release. Okay, that's within the application setting record. Now let's go into initial setup changes to real estate and asset lease. So like I mentioned, in the accounting tab of real estate and asset lease, we've added a new local reporting required checkbox. This is for multinationals. As you can see here in the screenshot, there's a new local reporting Boolean checkbox here that will enable this to be multinational tab, which is hidden next to the accounting tab, which we'll show. Nithian will show that in detail. And then in our accounting tab, we created a new section called lease classification section. This lease classification section, if people are familiar with our previous releases, the lease classification field had type A and type B as classification. With the new standard adoption, we now change those to finance and operating. Type A equals finance, type B equals operating. So we also have a patch helper for existing customer to clean those data up. So you have to make sure that your current leases, your lease classification is either set to type A, type B, and then a patch helper will run through and clean those up to be finance and operating. So we also added an override lease classification action. When this override is used for when it's a finance record, we can override it to an operating record when it's set for the new standard. And then we also have this no alternative use. There's no alternative use for specialized assets for a lessor at the end of the lease term, GAAP and FASB treatment. This is only applies to GAAP and FASB treatment, and this is a new question for the new standard. So if there is an alternative, there's no alternative use, it's a yes and no. So I'll go into more detail on this when I demo it. And then also for IFRS, under IFRS, how a company will remeasure the asset, there's a few selections there, which I'll go into more detail later. And then we also added a fair market value currency field, so that the system will calculate the fair market using a fair market value for the schedule. And then lease rate use, IRR, is the internal rate of return %, and then also management assumption description field. This is for using an override. If you override with the action, this management assumption is required so that it has a trail saying why are you overriding it. And we also changed some changes in assumption audit log. So in the initial adoption for initial adoption to the new standard, we added this new type into the assumption audit log, where in a next session, Nithian will go through like assumption audit log and initial adoption, and also review assumption. He'll go through those changes. We added there also fiscal period and fair market value, and then a recalc checkbox has been moved down to accounting term section. And there's also, like I mentioned, accounting live. We have some validations that are implemented on the assumption audit log when accounting live is checked. So let's demo the real estate lease and asset lease. So let me go to the record here. So basically, I created a few records for our initial setup to show. So here we have GAAP. I think I have it open before. Yeah, here. So this is our regular lease. And if we go to the accounting tab, as you can see, we made accounting standard read-only now for the new standard, since our leases should now be either GAAP or IFRS. If our corporate standard is GAAP, throughout our whole portfolio should be GAAP. If we're an international company, if our accounting standard is IFRS, then our whole corporate leases should be IFRS. So as you can see, we added this new section, like I mentioned, lease classification with the lease classification field here. That it used to be in accounting detail. We shifted down to the new lease classification for the new standard. And we still have the FASB treatment and the no alternative use to specialized assets here. It's a yes or no question. So it's another question. So what I mean by this is if our FASB treatment, if our accounting standard is GAAP, we will see FASB treatment. If our accounting standard is IFRS, we'll see IFRS. So here, if we say classification as operating, it needs to be finance. So if we do it as finance, it will change back to operating. Wait, I think I messed up. It should be operating, and then it'll be finance. So when it's operating, and we want it to override it to finance. There we go. Then the on change will make it to finance. And override is the action that I mentioned in our initial setup. So we have override action. It'll override it to, we can override it to operating. So once we override it back to operating, management assumptions required, and we need to explain why it needs to be operating. And like I mentioned, fair market values here, lease rate of return is also here. So that's with the initial setup. This is also applied to asset lease. So asset lease will have the same lease classification section and with these new fields. So this is for GAAP, and IFRS will be similar, so let me just show you that quickly. So I have an initial setup here for IFRS. So as you can see, accounting standard, we will never have a mix. For demo purposes, we're having a mixture of leases of like accounting standard of IFRS and accounting standard of GAAP. But corporate-wide, it should be only one standard. So here, like I mentioned, you'll still have the lease class, and you'll have the IFRS question here. At the amortization cost, you'll see three values. So at the set amortization cost, when we set this as amortization, we will be changing the incremental borrow rate to reflect. If we change it to FV under ISA 16 on review assumptions, we will be using it as fair market value. Will be changed. And currently, for FV under ISA 40, it's not used in TRIRIGA. We're not supporting this. It will be used. We will be able to export it out, and the customer can use it in the external system. And then I believe that's it for the initial setup. Anything else? Oh, and then like I mentioned, review assumption, the assumption audit log, which Nithya will be presenting in another session. We've have fiscal period, fair market value, and as you can see, accounting start date here. Since right now I don't have the accounting live check, we're not seeing the checkbox Boolean here. But the recalculate Boolean here will be visible if certain validations are passed. So that's it for the initial setup. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. So for multinational local reporting, Nithya will cover this.
Thanks, Yang. I'll be covering multinational reporting, which is a new feature we introduced in 10.5.1 as part of a new accounting standards. So the local reporting is nothing but it is it is for multinational companies. It's additional tab, which is what we do at an accounting tab. It's a kind of a similar thing. You see it in a new tab, which is you will have different schedules for the local standards. So, for example, if a corporate office in company A in US and it has its other offices in Australia and other places, so the accounting tab will be GAAP, and in local reporting tab will be IFRS. We'll see more details when we do the demo. And to do this functionality, we introduced the new field, which is local reporting required. It's a Boolean field in the accounting tab. The minute you click on that, there will be a new tab that will be appearing next to the accounting tab. That's called local reporting. So under local reporting, you have questions and common questions. Whatever the common questions from accounting tab, will be automatically moved to the local reporting tab also. And lease treatment calculations, we have now 2 lease treatment calculations. Earlier, schedules were determined based on a lease treatment field. Now we have new section called lease classifications. In the lease classifications, whatever the derived amount, when you click on calculate lease treatment, if it is finance or operating, based on the questions answered, this will be determined, and based on that, the corresponding schedules will be displayed on the tab. So processing of a local reporting schedules, which is how we are doing and how the system process, we can talk more about on the demo one. So next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to see some local reporting lease. So I'm going to share my screen. So this is our environment. Going under leases and releases. So I created some leases for today's demo. So I'm going to do one of the leases, I already pre-filled the details and all those things. So this is going to be it's a kind of a 4 years lease, and I have already populated the details needed for this lease and contact and payments. I have 3 payment schedules, and it's a 1,000 fixed increment for every term. And in the accounting tab, as I said earlier, we have accounting standard. Now we made this as it is a read-only. So it always, like when you create a new lease, it automatically populates from the application settings. So the idea is like through the corporate, it should be a same lease type, lease standard. It should be so as per the new standards. So this will be no longer editable. So and it always copies from accounting application settings. Local reporting required. This is the field that we were talking about. So the minute I click on this field, as you see, there is a local reporting tab is visible now. So when accounting tab is GAAP, and in the local reporting tab, it should be IFRS. So when I do here, like since it is a GAAP, and I have questions here, FASB treatment questions. So if I answer, for example, I answer this to yes, and answer to no, all these things. If I do calculate lease treatment, now if you see this lease classification, I change it to finance, and also in the local reporting tab, you don't need to, some common questions you don't need to answer. So for example, this question applies to both the sections, on local reporting as well as in the accounting tab, but the questions will be asked in only one place. Say if I go and change this to no, it automatically reflects in the application local reporting tab also. And which is non-standard ones, which is not there in accounting tab, those questions will be available on the local reporting tab. You can answer it, and based on that, your lease treatment will be calculated, and also lease classification. So in this case now, if I recalculate the lease, so it is going to be operating, as Young already mentioned that, you can, based on the changes on the questions, it can be operating or, finance schedule. And also alternate or specialization asset to lesser, that will change it to finance too. So it's the same thing. And when we go to the local reporting tab, like you see earlier, everything is automatically calculated, it's automatically copied over, in the local reporting, in the accounting tab, you set the lease type as building and land, and it is also copied here as a building and land. And the questions are available here, which is basically not available in the accounting tab. The main idea is here, you should not be giving inconsistent answers. For example, if we open this as editable on both the sections, one might be yes, one might be no. That's we don't need that kind of thing. And when you click on a calculate lease treatment, and that's when you will see based on the lease classification type, and you will see the schedule, if it is a finance or operating schedule. So always IFRS is a finance schedule. And in case of IFRS, I will not be able to change that now. So quickly, I'm going to change the one to application settings to IFRS. So if I create a new lease, so it automatically populates the IFRS. So when it is IFRS, and if you can see it in the local reporting tab, took some time. Okay. In the local reporting tab, you can see like, in a FASB. That's how it is. It will be vice versa. So just, to show how the IFRS lease will look, and that's the reason I just went and changed it in application settings. So we can go back to my previous record. So, I already activated two leases. One is of type GAAP, which is kind of a local US one. And with all this information, if you go to the accounting tab, so you can see the new straight line schedules, and which is balancing. And also, like, as part of a new standard, you will see now operating schedule, which is like, it is also kind of balancing. You see the numbers are going down to 0. And also in the local reporting, if you see, there is a finance schedules. So this is specific to the local. In case of, for example, if the GE is an organization corporate in the US, and in the Australia GE, they might see the finance schedules over based on their lease statements. So I think this is the GAAP one, and the next lease is going to be like a IFRS one, which is kind of a similar. And you see that it will be like a straight line, and it will be, I made it like finance schedule. Accounting time can be, it's like based on, since it is IFRS, it will be always finance. And if you go to the GAAP, it will be totally opposite to the earlier, like it is operating schedule. I think that's it. I pretty much covered everything for multinational. This is a basic idea of the multinational. So the processing wise, we are actually doing when you activate earlier, the workflow processes goes through one time, which will be like only accounting tab it used to do. Now it is actually doing it 2 times. So first time it will go and complete at the end of the process, activation process, it will check, is the local reporting enabled for this lease? Then what it does is it goes through, it sets there is a flag inside, hidden field flag inside the lease, which is a generate local reporting, which will be set, and that triggers another process on the same lease, which will do the local reporting schedules calculations. So, it's, I think that's all about it, right? It's not too much to demo here. So I think that's it. And going back to Young.
Sure. Thanks, Nitin. Can you stop sharing?
Yep.
So let me start sharing. Let me know when you see my screen, Nitin.
Yeah, I see.
Okay, so let me bring back the PowerPoint. So this was for new customers. Let me show slideshow. So now we'll go through multinational or local reporting for existing customers, since existing customers already have data in their system. So this new enhancement allows existing active leases to report multinational. It will enable the local reporting tab to display, like how Nithya mentioned, when a corporate standard is GAAP and local reporting will be IFRS. This new process allows the lease accountant for a quick way to enable local reporting that are activated. There are some requirements to this before they can do this. The lease accountant will need to make sure that portfolio-wide, like we've been mentioning, it's governed by either GAAP or IFRS in the accounting tab. We shouldn't be having a mixture of accounting tabs to be IFRS or GAAP. It has to be all GAAP or it has to be all IFRS. So there might be some cleanup for existing customer if you guys have a mixture. And then also lease accountant needs to verify that the active leases have the treatment set either for FASB or IFRS treatment based on your accounting standards. And then, so how this enhancement works is it's going to be on a lease accounting portal. We added 2 new portal sections, one called local reporting for real estate lease and one called local reporting for asset lease. And then within these 2 portals, we have 2 query sections that the first one will identify real estate lease that requires local reporting, which we're able to see a list of these contracts and identify which one needs to have local reporting. And then move them to a different state called a local reporting state, which it's just in that state so that no one can edit it. And when you're ready to go and answer the questions like how Nithian was mentioning, we'll go through the pending. And we created a new action form that allows the ability to quickly answer those questions and apply it to a contract. And same goes as asset lease. Asset lease will identify the lease that requires local reporting, and then we'll see a pending. And here's a screenshot of the identify query. So a user will see a list of leases, and you'll check and then identify. And I'll go through this in the demo. And same thing as pending. Pending is each individual leases that are local reporting will be able to drill in and click on this new action form. And here's the local reporting action form. We'll answer the questions like how Nithian was mentioning. So here we're going to be pulling from which is why if the existing leases already has their, for example, here we see IFRS as our action form. We'll be pulling data from the contract of that treatment. So here, the accounting tab treatment would have been GAAP, and we'll be pulling data like how Nithian mentioned. It will mirror what IFRS is, and then the other questions are editable where we can go and edit. So with that said, let's dive in and show the demo. To my lease here. So I have a couple of them here. Let me log in as lease accountant portal here. So hold on here. So as you can see, this is a lease accountant portal, and these are the 2 new sections that we added, local reporting for real estate lease and local reporting for asset lease. And here we're going to go and identify it's just taking a little time.
Maybe it is because recording.
Okay. Here, let me filter my my records. So here we have real estate lease for that we're going to identify. So here we can drill in and see the lease. This one, basically this lease, we're going to identify it as currently it's active, and we need to make sure that this active lease, the lease classifications set, FASB treatments has been set for the existing lease. And as you can see, since it's active, it's not editable. We wanted a way to allow the user to be able to change this record to be local reporting. So without even revising, and select it and do identify local reporting, and this will take it to the new query of pending. So if we go in to see pending, come back, so accountant will have some time to be able to go first, identify all of them, and then come into each individual ones that are pending and this was the one that we have for the demo purpose. So now it's set ready for pending for local reporting. The user then comes in and is able to make it to local reporting for the action form. Oh, it's already open, sorry. So here, as you can see, this is in a different state where we'll only have this action form that will be able to do local reporting against. So let me pull this side by side. I can't. So this one is for GAAP. As you can see, local reporting will be IFRS. And let me just go to the accounting tab here to show you. So here we have operating, and we're not answering anything here. And then when we click local reporting, it'll bring the lease type and all the fields that it needs to be set are read-only. It will bring the mirror of it, like how Nithya mentioned. And then we can either select a few just to make it, to calculate the treatment, so that local reporting will calculate it to finance, and then we can process this. So once it's processed, behind the scene, the system will make this contract to become a local reporting. So once it's processed, let me refresh this. Oops, so it just finally went through. Open this back, it's processing. So right now, the system is doing the calculations to the schedules, and it will process. And as you can see, local reporting tab is already getting set, and you can see that the finance is displaying. And right now, the workflow is running through to create these schedules. So that's how existing customers will do their local reporting for their existing leases. And let me go back to the portal, and you can see that the pending, it won't be here anymore since I didn't refresh. You'll see that the pending of that lease is for the demo was already changed to the different state, and it's still going through and doing the calculations. And this will also be the same thing for asset lease. Asset lease will work the same way, similar way. You'll identify it, and then once you identify it, then you go through and each process and do the pending, and it's the same thing, basically. So I believe that's what our existing leases needs to go through. Let me come back to a PowerPoint and let's see if I'm missing anything. I think that's it. Is there anything else, Nityan, that you could think of?
No, that's it. Like, all these changes are applies to the both the leases, like asset lease as well as the RE lease. It's kind of a functionality. It's a similar one.
And I think that's it for our T-Tech section for this time. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact me and Nitya.
Okay. Thank you so much for watching our video.